Imagine being a young journalist and coming face to face with one of the most infamous fugitives in American history. Someone whose face was printed on FBI wanted posters and whose name carried weight in both law enforcement and pop culture. That person was Assata Shakur, the godmother of Tupac Shakur, who became one of the FBI's most wanted after being convicted in connection with the death of a New Jersey state trooper in the 1970s. She escaped from prison and fled to Cuba, where she would spend the rest of her life in exile. Despite a $2 million bounty placed on her head, she managed to live out her days on the island, carving out an existence that was both hidden and surprisingly visible. Recently, the Cuban Foreign Ministry confirmed her death at the age of 78, closing the chapter on a life that continues to spark debate, inspire some, and anger others decades after the events that first placed her in the spotlight. Assata Shakur's life in Cuba wasn't the revolutionary paradise some might have imagined, and even she admitted that reality was more complicated. In one rare interview, she recalled being stopped by a Cuban police officer who demanded her papers simply because of her skin color. She described how the officer quickly let her go once realizing she was a foreigner, but the incident stuck with her as a reminder that racism exists everywhere. Still, she insisted there was a difference. In her view, leaders in Cuba were actively trying to dismantle systemic racism, while she believed leaders in the United States perpetuated it. At the time, Cuba was in what's known as the Special Period, grappling with the loss of Soviet support after the collapse of the USSR, leaving the country in deep economic crisis. Yet, Shakur built a life there, moving carefully through Cuban society, a fugitive to some, but a neighbor and community member to others. In 1998, when Cuba was still struggling to hold on after the collapse of the Soviet Union, a 21-year-old college student working as a CNN intern in Havana had the bold idea to try to find her. To the shock of many, locating Assata Shakur wasn't as impossible as one might think. Though she was officially one of the most wanted fugitives in the United States, in Cuba, she lived far more openly, known within certain circles and spoken of with both caution and familiarity. Meeting her revealed a side of her personality that was reflective yet unwavering. Someone who knew exactly how controversial her presence was, but still carried herself with confidence. For the young intern, sitting across from a woman whose name was synonymous with defiance and who remained untouchable to American authorities, was an unforgettable experience. It showed how Shakur's life was a strange blend of being hunted and at the same time untouchable. Assata Shakur's legacy remains one of the most polarizing in modern American history. To her supporters, she symbolized the fight against racial injustice, state oppression, and the struggles of Black activists in the 1970s. To her critics, she was a convicted criminal who had escaped justice and lived comfortably while avoiding accountability. This divide has kept her name alive for decades, with passionate debates about whether she was a revolutionary or a fugitive hiding behind political ideology. Her familial connection to Tupac Shakur only amplified her story, linking her to one of the most iconic cultural figures of all time. For many, that connection elevated her beyond the world of politics and into the realm of pop culture mythology. What cannot be denied is that her life forced conversations about race, justice, and exile, conversations that remain as relevant today as they were when she first fled the United States. With news of her passing at 78 years old, Assata Shakur's extraordinary and controversial journey has reached its conclusion, though the debates surrounding her will not end anytime soon. For decades, she was at the top of America's most wanted list, and for decades, she managed to outlast every attempt to bring her back to the United States. Her death in Cuba, confirmed by the government there, marked the end of an era for a woman who lived her life in defiance of authority, yet in quiet coexistence with a society that gave her refuge. For the families tied to her case, her death reopens old wounds, while for her supporters, it marks the loss of a figure they saw as a fighter for justice. Whether remembered as a revolutionary or as a fugitive, Assata Shakur's life story remains one of survival, resilience, and controversy. Her name will endure long after her passing,